Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk about Black History Month. The month that is a celebration of my people, because I am a black man and everything. And it's about all our accomplishments, all the oppression that we have gone through over like centuries of living in like America and stuff like that. So I'm here today to talk to you about the Spiderwick Chronicles, Season 1. So before I start this off, let me just say, yes, I know it's not Black History Month. February was a while ago and everything, but this series came out on April 19th. So, yeah. So I figured, and you're probably wondering, okay, well, if I'm talking about the Spiderwick Chronicles, why do I have my black template and everything, my Black History Month template? Well, that's because the Grace family has been race bent to be half black. They're half black and I'm gonna assume half white. I'm still not sure what the Grace father is. He looks white, but then again, he looks like something else. So yeah. And so, like, deal with it and everything. I don't want to hear people talking about like, oh, this show sucks because of wokeness and blah 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 and stuff like that. Get over it, man. Anyways, so yes, this is a interesting show. And I say interesting because, well, it's not that great. It's okay and it's entertaining, but there are some differences and flaws in this show that really stick out and everything. The pacing being one of them. Two, the major deviation from the source material. And then the character development. There's only 8 episodes. It's not that rushed, but like there's some things that are just off with the pacing and stuff. It's an okay show. Like, I mean, you'll be entertained. There's some interesting things here and there. However, it just feels generic. See, Harry Potter was both a blessing and a curse. Because of Harry Potter, everybody has been trying to adapt fantasy novels and stuff. And Harry Potter still, to this day, is the most successful, having tons of movies and stuff. The second successful is probably the Twilight series, and then the Chronicles of Narnia. But the Chronicles of Narnia crashed and burnt after the 3rd movie. Everything else has pretty much just had 1 or 2 movies, but for the most part, just 1. And when they crashed and burned, years later, they made television shows out of those movies that didn't do quite so well. And some of those television shows were pretty good, like a series of unfortunate events. Percy Jackson, like I said before, that really bored me and everything. So I wasn't feeling that, and a lot of other people wasn't either. But the Spiderwick Chronicles, so here's the thing. I am completely unaware of this series. I've never heard of it. I've never seen the movie that came out years ago. And I was completely lost while watching this. And even while watching this, something in the back of my head feels like, something just feels different. And I'm not talking about the race bending or nothing like that, but something in all the characters that are brand new to this series that was never in the books. But something just fell off and everything. And so after watching it, I did some research. I researched the books and I researched the movie. And yes, this is a loose adaptation, a huge loose adaptation. They pretty much change. Okay, they keep the gist of how the characters are, the main characters, right? But everything else is pretty much changed. The motivation, the plot, and they introduce a ton of new characters that was never introduced in the movie or the books. Also, for a fantasy television show, it lacks that fantasy element. Why? Because it feels like a low budget streaming show. It's odd. It's really odd how these streaming shows don't have much of a budget to do what they need to do, But then you'll watch like a television show from like the 90s or early 2000s, and even they was able to do a bit more than what this show was able to do. And as crappy as some of them shows were back in the 90s and 2000s with the CGI or like the costumes, I at least appreciate they did that a whole lot more than what they did here. The fantasy world just looks like a regular forest, but they added a yellow filter and yellow fog. And that wasn't very fantasy-like. Like, it made it look different, but it was no different than being out in the woods with a regular, like, no filter and everything. Now, what's interesting about this show, this was originally, back in 2021, supposed to be a Disney Plus show for 6 episodes. And so it was near completion and everything. Actually, it was complete. But then they decided to scrap it because of budgetary reasons. So they shipped it. And Roku TV picked it up and added 2 more additional episodes, making it out to 8. And it needed those extra 2 episodes, I'll tell you that. Now, here's the thing. The show is, like I said, it's just mid. It's kind of bland. It's kind of mid. But when you get halfway into the series towards the end, it picks up steam and it gets a bit better. But even though it gets a bit better, it needed more. It needed more of that fantasy element. When they go to the forest, it needs to look like a fantasy forest. When they have all these fairy tale like creatures and this and that, we need to actually see them. The show does not have the budget for that. They have an ogre. The ogre looks great, but you only see the ogre for like a split second because they don't have the budget to keep them there all the time. So that's why you need to build a person in, build a suit and put a person in there. Build a person. Now don't be making no people now. But yeah, build a suit and put a person in there. As for Timbletat, he looked okay. Like, he looked pretty good, but you can tell he was totally CGI and everything. Same with like the fairies, but Timbletat is barely in the show and everything. He's mostly invisible the entire time. And it's just like, I've said before, like, I've watched shows that were based on books and they changed things around, like Legend of the Seeker. I love Legend of the Seeker, even though they changed it a lot. And that's because I loved this show before I ever researched it. And I loved it for years and years. And then I finally researched it and stuff. So I'm like, oh, okay, they deviated, so it kind of sucks. Same thing with Harry Potter. I loved Harry Potter before I started researching it. Towards the middle and end of the Harry Potter movie series, I started to get irritated because I started to read up online what they're about, and the things that they left out irritated me. So if you are a hardcore, what is it called, Spiderwick Chronicles fan, you're gonna be really upset that they changed a lot of the material around. Now, I mean, they changed like a lot and stuff. However, because people was interested in seeing how this was gonna be, this ended up being Roku's most watched series and everything, getting in the millions. That has never happened because Roku is just basically, they acquire other stuff from other channels and networks and stuff like that, and they rarely make their own stuff. Speaking of which, like I said before, Disney Plus is the one who made this, but also Paramount and 20th Century Fox, which is now called 20th Television or something like that. And the reason why Paramount, who was associated with Nickelodeon, like, why would they work with Disney? That's because they made the movie back in the day. I am now kind of curious to see what the movie's about. But, I'll get into a little bit later of what they changed. But, when it comes to the pacing, when I say it's off, it's off. It's like, when all the events start to happen in the first episode, see, what I appreciate, they get straight to the point. They don't linger too long. But once they get straight to the point, it does kind of make you wonder, why exactly is Gerald so invested in finding these lost pages and trying to prove that there's like a hidden world and everything? Like, he is very adamant about trying to discover this hidden world, which is odd because he's like a bad boy and everything. But I think it's because people think that he's making this up and he just wants to prove it. Um, the acting all around is mid. It could use some polishing here and there. And that kind of hurts the show because when the show tends to be a little lackluster because it's kind of like it's not so much a preteen type thing, or like a teen YA novel type thing. It's a fantasy thing, but it's like I said, it's not that much fantasy. It's mostly generic where you just be around the human world and you hang around a bunch of humans, and even people who are not human are still dressed like human and they rarely turn into their actual forms. The acting could have been a bit more better all around and everything. And it's like the main villain dude, he didn't act evil whatsoever. Like he acted very cavalier in his human disguise and everything. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to be scared of this dude? Like I never felt like I was really like anybody was really in danger by being in the show until towards the end while a bunch of people were asleep, and then you had the mushroom people. Yes, instead of goblins, you got mushroom people. Now the mushroom people look great. But it's different. And stuff. Like it's different. And like modern Hollywood did check a couple of stuff off the boxes. Like you can tell just by watching this. I'm just kind of like, I ain't heard phrases like this in 2020. And like I said before, if you're gonna have like a black awareness type like, speech or whatever, it needs to feel organic and it needs to make sense within the realm of the show. And for the most part, it kinda did not. And I'm black myself, and I appreciate those black awareness like speeches, but it needs to feel organic. It just can't just throw it in your face and then just linger off and do something completely different. Like an example, Jared and Simon, who are like twins, like I said before, they've been race bit to be black and they're in a new town. And as they're walking, they see the main bad guy in his human form. I forget what his real human name is, but he's a psychiatrist. But anyway, he looks at Gerald all weird, and Simon's all like, "What's his problem?" And so Jared thinks that the reason why he looked at him weird is because they're black. And he assumed that's how the white people are in that town. That completely came out of nowhere. And the problem with that, the problem is like no other white person in that town acts that way. They're new to that town and nobody stares them down. In fact, everybody is actually, for the most part, pretty nice to them when they walk around town. So he had this assumption that like all the people and all at least all the white people in town are like racist towards black people, but there's no evidence of that whatsoever. It would have made more sense to say that if the white people in town were hicks and looked at them all funny and acted nasty towards them and stuff, but you don't get that here. And the fact that he's half white and half black, that's kind of weird that like he would say that and stuff. And so that's what I'm saying when they like have a black awareness speech, but then there's nothing that proves any of that, or it doesn't linger throughout the rest of the episode. And so you're confused as to why he's saying it. And in fact, that speech made him seem racist of all things. But that's in the first episode. But then when we get to like the sixth episode or so, you kind of understand why he said that. His teacher back in his New York, who they never say the person's race, but pretty much what happened was the teacher assumed that Jared stole something and wanted to know where he got them shoes, thinking he stole those as well. And then he said he tried to use a Martin Luther King speech to justify what he said, meaning that Jared has problems with white people assuming that he's like a thief in that, even though he is, because he literally stole bubblegum in the first episode. So you kind of now get an understanding why many episodes later, why he said what he said. And then there's Mallory, and Thimbletack had like glued her hair to like the wall. And so she makes this speech about her hair, and she's and she's really impactful when she says, like, do you know how hard it is to make my hair look like this? All the preparation I have to go through. And so basically what she's saying is, black hairstyles take a long time to, like, do what they have to do to get it looking a certain way. And a lot of people look down, so a lot of people do look down on black hairstyles, especially black women. And we've heard before from black celebrities talking about how they've been on shows and like there isn't a person to actually do their hair that knows how to do their hair. And in the case of Boy Meets World, the only black actress that they had on the show, one of the white actresses mocked her hairstyle and everything. And so this is supposed to be a speech about, appreciate black hair and stuff like that. And she was talking about how, like, people make fun of her hair because it was in pigtails and stuff like that when she was younger, and like all this other stuff, and then talk about how her hair is important. That is a great speech, but the problem is like, once again, it would be more helpful if we see her constantly fiddling with her hair, doing her hair, making sure her hair is perfect, or seeing other people who are not black make fun of her hairstyle or snicker or laugh or something like that. Then that speech would have made a whole lot more sense, other than it just being there and stuff, Another little check mark thing they did on the list was that at one point in time during the festival, Simon was out and he spotted these two girls just like kissing and making out. Now, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but the fact that he was just staring at them from around the corner, basically spying on them, was creepy and everything. And it's like the two girls that were kissing, the thing about that is, like, why I say it's a check mark and everything is because nothing came from that. They were just two random girls who was a faraway distance just making out, and they weren't real characters in the show. They didn't have a story arc. It was just like nothing. They just wanted to show us, hey, look, there are two lesbians kissing. Like, let's check it off the list. Aren't we great in everything? We have representation. To me, that's false representation because they don't do nothing with these two characters other than displaying them and stuff like that. And when I watch TV shows, I don't see men and women randomly kissing from like a faraway distance and stuff like that. Now, it would have made more sense if, say, they was at like a house party or something like that, or a club. Then you don't need no explanation because people just make out randomly like that. And they do have a house party, but you don't see nobody making out and stuff like that. So it felt like they were just like checking it off like, a list. I'm trying to think. Also, like, there's another thing that, even though it was a check mark, I'm okay with this check mark. One of the new characters asked Mallory, we'll find you, like, if you want, like, there's plenty of people you can like date or make out with, blah blah. We can find you a guy or like a girl or a non-binary person. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm okay with that check mark because the simple fact that there are tons of non-binary people in the world and they want to be recognized and they want to be called by their respective pronouns and stuff like that. Just like if it's like a male or female. See, something like that makes total sense. Now, there's one more little thing that's a little odd is when, like, the main bad guy is talking about water. I'm okay with this speech because what he said was spot on. That water is naturally comes from the planet. And how dare the government tax people and make a profit off of something that's supposed to be free for people. I am so with that. Like, why should we have to pay for water? Why should we have to pay for water in the store, in the faucet, like whatever, you know what I'm saying? Now that could be something more like, oh, it's just a man sticking it to like the poor people, or like, some type of environmental type speech. But like I said before, I'm with that because it's the honest to God truth. Why the heck should we have to pay for this crap if it's completely and utterly free? I mean, for heck, people used to walk around, ride their horses, get off their horses, scoop their hand in like a lake and drink the water back in the old days and stuff. And I hate to sound like a downer and everything, for Black History Month, I like to have uplifting videos and stuff. And I think it's great that like there's a fantasy like show with a black family and everything. But the problem is the show is a bit lackluster. It's just generic and everything. If it's a fantasy show, show the fantasy. If it's something about people being in danger, you really, really, really gotta show them being in danger. The show just plays it way too safe and everything. Like you have to up that ante. It needs some rewrites, it needs some polishing and stuff. Because this really could have been something like really huge, really special. And I'm afraid, man, that it's going to get canceled. They're not going to be able to fix their mistakes. And of course, people are going to blame this on race bending and wokeness and them being black and everything. And I hate that crap. I've said this before. If Hollywood is going to keep race bending people, especially turning them black, you need to make it a banger. You can't have a lackluster show or movie because you're always going to have them bigots online complaining that, oh, well, it's wokeness that destroyed it. Well, you know what? When a project has an all-white cast and it bombs, you don't hear them complain at all. Because this did have a movie years ago, and the movie never got a sequel. But you didn't hear them complain then. You didn't hear them complain, well, the whiteness destroyed this movie and everything. So you don't hear that crap. But when it has to do with wokeness or diversity or black folks, they always want to point the finger at that. And like I said before, I'm cool with diversity. I'm cool with wokeness and everything. I'm cool with speeches that race related speeches and stuff like that. But you gotta make it make sense. Like if you're gonna have a speech talking about, oh, they just looking at us because we're black, you need to actually show people hating on them because they're black. Or if you have a big hair speech, you need to explain and show, if you're gonna say people make fun of you because your hair, because it's black, you need to actually show that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Now, speaking of diversity, like I said before, they race bent the Grace family. I don't have a problem with that. I could care less about that. I could care less about people race bending people, stuff like that. Or even gender bending and stuff. But this poster right here, I have offense to. Now, since I've started paying more closely attention to TV shows and movie and marketing and stuff like that, I have taken extreme offense to this poster. When you have a poster, like, an advertisement poster of a TV show or a movie, your main star is supposed to be front and center, or they're supposed to be bigger than everybody else, or they're supposed to do something in the picture that makes them stand out. When you look at this picture, Christian Slater, who plays the main bad guy, stands out. His hands are out, he's in the middle, and he's bigger than everybody else that's to his side. I am confused by this. See, the main characters are the twins most importantly in everything. Yeah, it's the whole Grace family in general, but it's the twin boys who are the main characters, right? They are our heroes and stuff like that. They are the ones who go on these adventures. And like I said before, Mallory too. But it feels like the show feels more like the twins. But the twins are on the side, and their size is different from that of the dude in the middle. And the thing is, if they're gonna race bend this entire family and commit to that, then fully commit to that. You know what I'm saying? Like the boy should have been front and center, or they should have been much bigger than everybody else. That is how you do it. And I'll give you some examples. Batman Returns. Now, in Batman Returns, nobody is bigger than anybody else in the promotional picture that they have for like the DVD cover and stuff like that. And even though Batman should be front and center and larger than everybody else, they decided not to because of the simple fact that Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer are equal to that of Michael Keaton. They are all big movie stars in their own right. So they decided to keep it neutral and everything and have everybody the same size. That's one way that most people do it. Now, for Batman Forever, it is different. In Batman Forever, Val Kilmer is front and center with a much larger picture, and everybody else is much smaller than his picture. The reason for this, they decided to make the hero larger than everybody else, larger than the villains, larger than the sidekick. Even though everybody in this movie is a huge movie star. Well, Chris O'Donnell used to be before Batman and Robin. That derailed his career. That stuck him on TV. But back in the day, he was a huge movie star. So they decided, okay, even though everybody's a huge movie star, we're gonna have the lead be the biggest. And that's how it's supposed to happen in the second scenario and stuff. So, if I look at this, and like I said before, I know nothing about this series, or at least I didn't before I researched it, I would have assumed that the dude in the middle is supposed to be this main important superhero, like the main person of like the thing, you know what I'm saying? But he's not. It's the two dudes on the side. And so I hate when they did this crap. If you were gonna commit to race bending the entire family, then you fully commit. Don't halfway commit because you get scared because like the audience is gonna be like, oh, look, they went woke and race bent the family and everything. They're like, uh-oh, let's make them smaller on like the poster and everything. I don't appreciate that. Now, one reason why Christian Slater is probably front and center in the middle and bigger than everybody else is because he's the most recognizable star, being a huge movie star. However, one could also argue that Joy Bryant is also equally famous because she's been in like a lot of stuff. But, you know, you don't see her like front and center. So I really don't, this just rubs me wrong when they have him front and center in the middle. Now, when watching this show, one thing I've noticed is that it has a juvenile feel to it. It feels like this should be like for kids or something like that. And that's because it's supposed to and everything. The dialogue between like the teen characters makes them feel like they're kids or preteens and not that of older teens who are 16 and 17. And they aged up all the characters in like the TV show. The characters are actually supposed to be around 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And it comes off very odd and clunky when you listen to the dialogue and everything because they're constantly referring to themselves as kids. And they're like, we're kids, we're kids, we're kids. And then one person like, don't treat me like a child. And I'm like, dude, why are they saying this constantly, like saying they're kids and stuff? And that's because it was meant for kids and stuff. And it's just odd that they would age up the characters and stuff. And they act juvenile, they talk juvenile. Every once in a while they do act mature. But that juvenile sense was still there because they're trying to keep to source material. But if you're going to age up the characters, you can't rely on the source material for them having been so young. Because even when you listen to or watch the show and you see the plot, it feels kind of juvenile. Like it feels like a child adventure and everything, as opposed to a much older teenage like adventure and stuff. See, the Harry Potter movies did it smart. They started off as kids and had kid stories, but had them mature. Then as they got older, everything got much darker and stuff and grittier. Here they did a complete opposite, which don't make no sense. So in this show, so the books were created by that of Holly Black, and I can't say this dude's name, Tony Di Terralito or something like that. They're the ones who create the show. They're also executive producers on the show. No, they didn't create the show, my bad. They created the books, and they also the executive producers on the show. They've also been advertising the show. I am very shocked and surprised they allowed all these changes that happened in the show. The show was created by Aaron Coletti, and so Leon Daniels, he plays that of Jared. Jared is the more out of control twin. He's the angry twin. He's the one who constantly screws up to where the family can't, like, they love him, but they can't get along with him. Like he's always like messing with the sister. The sister can't stand him. His twin brother, on the other hand, loves him to death, but ultimately pretty much just hates his behind to a certain degree and stuff. And it's because he's constantly getting in trouble. He's always trying to start stuff with people. He just has a chip on his shoulder. One of the things that caused the family to dislike him and him to have a chip on the shoulder is the father. His father's neglectful, and the father left because he couldn't stand to be around Jared and stuff that much. And so, like, an incident happened where he was at his old school and he drew like a comic book of him punching somebody, and people assumed it was the teacher, but he says it was him because he can't stand himself either. He is the one who's adamant about discovering this like fantasy type world because he heard like a noise in the wall and he wanted to see what it was, and nobody wants to believe him, and so he goes on this like quest of trying to like figure out all this stuff and stop like the bad guy and and things like that. He is the one with the most character development in terms of self-reflection in a very YA novel type way. Noah Cottrell, he plays Simon. And Simon's more of the nicer twin, more compassionate and everything, understanding, easygoing. People always think of him as kind of like the perfect one. Him and Jared butt heads so much in this series. He develops a crush on Calliope, a brand new character who is created. Now, there's an interesting subplot where Simon and Calliope go back to New York to see Simon's father. And his father lied because his father's in a play. He just wasn't in the musical play that he says he was, the more fancier one. And for whatever reason, this just causes Simon to just like go like nuts, have like he's just furious, like why could you lie to me and blah 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 and stuff like that. I'm all like, yeah, he lied about being in one play musical thing, but he's technically in another. So what is the big deal in everything? I don't understand why he was so furious about that. But then they had that heart to heart about why the father left and all that other stuff, because he's mad that his dad left. And it's because, of course, of his twin brother and stuff. It's just an odd subplot and everything. But then there's an interesting subplot between, him and Calliope. They're trying to, she lies to him about finding out the truth about the father when she wants to go find out some other information, and they almost die. Though the pacing is so bizarre and weird in this show and stuff. Now, the relationship between him and her is pretty cool, but it's odd at the same time. It's like he only pretty much, it's never really explained why he likes her. He just does for whatever reason. I guess because she's attractive. The reason why she likes him because she knows that he likes her, and she knows that other creatures, magical creatures, don't like her because of the way she looks. and her power and all this other stuff. So it's a weird relationship that they're in. Michaela Lee plays Mallory. Only thing I know about her from the books is that she's brave and she fences. In the show, she fences too, but she's not so much brave at first. She actually whines and complains throughout the entire series, and she only becomes brave towards like the middle and everything, and at the end. But it just kind of happens only because source material says to do that. But it's weird because all throughout the series, her character is just whiny and everything. Joy Bryant, she plays Helen, the overprotective mother. Basically, she is tired of her son acting out, and she ends up having a crush on the main bad guy. Jack Dylan Grazer, he plays Thimbleback. And Thimbleback is a very angry brownie. I don't know what the heck a brownie is, but they look like a rat. But he's angry, he pulls pranks and this and that. And I remember that dude from Shazam, the It movies and stuff like that. His voice does not match his character whatsoever. Like, it just doesn't. But he's barely in, like, the show. He does assist, like, the twins and, like, the other kids and stuff. But he just appears randomly in the show, and he's constantly popping in and out. I don't know. I know in like the books and stuff, he's pissed at them because they messed up, I guess, like his home or nest or something like that. But he's really mean in like the show, like breaking their arm, gluing their hair, sticking them to the walls and all kind of crap. Christian Slater, and I can't pronounce the bad guy's name. I think it's Malagraph or something like that. He is an ogre. And basically his story in the show is that he's pissed at humans for messing up Mother Nature. So he wants to eat everybody in the world. But in order to do that, he makes them go to sleep. So he finds this crystal that has a dragon in it. He grows the dragon up. I guess he uses the dragon's breath to make people go to sleep. And he's gonna eat them and everything. And he eats a couple of people, like his neighbor. His neighbor is the lady from She-Hulk, the party girl who ends up with I think his name is Han, I think. And so like he's also like a counselor who's manipulating like Helen and trying to get like Jared locked up and stuff like that because he's looking for these pages. He hates Arthur Spiderwick, who mocks like ogres and other stuff, and he really hates humans and he hates how they messed up Mother Nature. So he just wants to eat them because of that. It's a weird plot. I'm not quite sure what the plot is in the story because I just got tired of reading it and stuff, because just like in the movie, this show takes place during like several books and stuff. Now, okay, so the picture of the ogre monster thing on the left, that's Malagareth, or however you say his name. That's his true like form. The human dude, Christian Slater, is his human form. So monster left, human right? And the monster form, the ogre form, you only see it for, I'm not even kidding, like a split second in the first episode. And he's like really far away back in the distance in the shadows, and you can't even tell he's brown. I thought he was black. Like, the whole color of his body was black. That's how far away he was, where you can't even see his face. And it's only for a split second. And the costume looks great. It looks the way it does in the book, but for whatever reason, they just didn't want to show it that much on screen. Probably because, like, maybe they thought, oh, it would be too scary for a YA kids novel or whatever. But it probably can't move that much and limited mobility. Probably. So what did they do? After they got done with the human version in the last episode, we got the cheap, low-budget version. And this is the cheap, low-budget version, where it's just his human face and a couple of spikes on his face. And I'm just kind of like, dude, where is your freaking budget? Like where? Was it all in the CGI of like Thimbleback or Thimbletack or what his name is? Like, where is your budget at? I've seen low budgeted Power Ranger shows that did better than this. If Power Rangers can do better than this, then you got no excuse. Or maybe the actor just wanted to show his face. Sometimes that happens. Like in all those like superhero Marvel movies, they keep taking off their mask. They keep taking it off because they want people to see their face. I hate when actors do that crap. Alvina Allen Lid, who's best known for playing young Dolly Parton. She was in Daybreak, and in the Chucky series, she plays Calliope. She's some kind of like demonic monster thing that can sense when a person is gonna die or something like that. And she's a shapeshifter just like an ogre. And so basically, if she knows somebody's about to die or she senses it, she'll shapeshift into them uncontrollably. We don't know what she looks like in her monster form. They do not show us. And that's the problem with the show. A lot of these monsters, we never get to see their true form. Because like with her, she doesn't want Simon to look at her because she's afraid that he will hate her just because of the way she looks. Because she's going to be alone for the rest of her life and nobody wants to be around her because of how she looks. And she's surrounded by like death and everything. So she causes him to be able to see her by spitting on sunglasses. I don't know how that works. And when he looks at her, we don't get to see her, but he does. He's all like, "You're beautiful." I'm like, dude, show us. It reminds me of a Boggett from like Harry Potter. Like, I just want to see what she looks like and everything, you know? But they don't have the budget for it, or they probably just don't know. I don't know what kind of creature she is. I forget what they call her. They probably made it up or something like that. But anyway, her and Simon develop feelings for each other. And it kind of happens in the oddest kind of way. Like when it happens with the bad guy and the mother, it makes more sense because he is using her to get to the son, to get to those pages. But he does end up liking her, but he'll still eat her if he wants to. Calliope, on the other hand, is a little odd. Like, at first, she starts off very, very, very angry and evil and always wanting to eat people. Then, by like the second or third episode, she's acting like a typical teenage girl, being sarcastic, being rude, wanting to play video games, and all this other stuff. And it's just kind of odd. Then she starts hanging around the twins, and she just starts playing around with Simon and developing feelings for him, like genuine feelings. But she still wants to eat everybody. But then she still wants to help out the main bad guy because she's scared of him. So she's conflicted in that, but she helps out Simon regardless and stuff. And that's what I'm saying with the pacing just kind of feels a bit rushed at times. There are other new characters like Emiko and like Hatcher and everything. They're completely made up for the show. Basically, they're people or they're teens who are awkward and everything. Kimiko's just rude and sarcastic, and Hatcher is just some guy who wears a helmet on his head for some bizarre reason and stuff. And so, like, they're brand new to the show and they help out. Mallory has this girl who she competes with in fencing, and some person named Maestro. Maestro is like blind and missing both her hands because she did something to try to stop like a bad guy and it didn't work. And basically, they need this magical sword that can kill like an ogre. And so they have to go to like, you know, this magical forest type place, talk to this guy, do something where he wants like 1,000 teeth. It's weird. And they play paper, rock, scissors in order to get the, it's very weird and childish. Okay. And everything. Then there's Aunt Lucinda, and basically she's kind of like she is in the books, where it's like her father, Arthur Spiderwick, he knew about this world of magical creatures and this and that, and he made some type of guide and to all this like stuff that the bad guys need. And so like he disappeared and stuff like that. And so people think she's crazy because like, oh, also there's a tree inside the house. I don't know if that's how it is in the book, but like the Spiderwick house and everything, there's a tree in the middle of the house, and the apples on there are poisonous and stuff, but you can actually eat them if you do a certain type of spell with it. I don't get it. Anyway, she's in the crazy house because people think she's crazy and everything, kind of like how she is in the books, but it's also much different. The bad guy stabs her and she just turns into flowers. It turns out that she lost her memories of all this fairy stuff. So she wouldn't get hurt and all this other stuff. And she asked like the magical creatures to take her from her humanly body and put her in this special place. And she kind of helps the twins in a weird ghostly kind of way. And I don't understand it. Then when the bad guy is seemingly dead, because here's the thing, all these magical creatures, iron hurts their body. So they somehow got this troll, because the troll ate the real psychiatrist doctor, and the bad guy took his form. And so like the troll person, somehow they transported him to the house. He stuck his arm through, grabbed the main bad guy, and they assumed the main bad guy was over, killed and everything. But he shapeshifted into Jared and told like Mallory to stab him because like, oh, look at me, I can touch iron. So she stabs him and he blinks and disappears. But it turns out he's the bad guy who survived and just shapeshifted into Jared. Then we see Jared in that magical land of the yellow filter and everything, and he meets his grandfather and the show ends. Will this get a second season? Heck if I know. But like I said before, it's an interesting show. It's entertaining. It's just off. Like, it's generic. It's a little bleak at times. They completely deviated from the source material. And it just feels a bit odd because it feels like it should be for kids, but then you see that they're older teenagers and the show just feels off and everything. If they get a second season, they're really gonna have to change the show up so it'd be more like the source material. Make it darker, bring in some actual fantasy creatures and stuff, and and explore this magical land and everything more. Now, when it comes to that of the books are separated by multiple books. And I understand why they combine multiple books together. That's what the movie did. Because when you look at the first book just seems very boring and extremely childish. It's only in the second book where things start to kick up and start to get interesting in the third. Now, see, in the book series, the main villain, Mallory Gareth, or whatever his name is, he doesn't appear into the last two books, but he's mentioned all throughout the first five or the first three books and stuff. So he appears in the fourth and the fifth. But he is the main antagonist and everything, right? So I understand why they wanted to bring the villain in a whole lot earlier, but they could have avoided that by just incorporating bits and pieces of the first and then going straight to the second when Simon gets kidnapped by the goblins and stuff, and the kids have to go rescue him in the forest. That was pretty adventurous, but you want more of an antagonist and stuff. Also, there's the troll that lives underneath the river and stuff, which they kind of depict in the show, just not to great extent. And the CGI on the arm is just terrible. It basically just grabs you and then brings you under, and I guess he eats you or something like that. But the thing about the main villain in the book, he just wants to be more powerful and do harm to people. See, he tricks people, he betrays people, he bullies people. He's very much an antagonist. He's very much an ogre. In the show, he's just wanting to punish humans because they screwed up nature and everything, which is really weird for an antagonist to want to do. Plus, he's not very villainous and scary in the show. He just manipulates people in a very charming kind of way. And if anything, Calliope bullies him around more than he should bully her and stuff. And it's just like, like I said, there are beats from the book that happen in the show. Like, kidnapping Lucinda, putting her in a mental ward, the kids finding like thimble tack and everything like that. And like, him wanting to do something very bad. But other than, and him also having a grudge against Arthur and everything, which we don't know too much about Arthur. He's vaguely mentioned in like the show. And, of course, there is the Seeing Stone and everything that Jared uses to see like magical creatures and this and that. But it's still very much a very loose adaptation that they pretty much just did their own thing. And, he does technically kidnap the mom at the end and everything. So it's like they combined all the books together, and then just incorporated in the first season, similar to what they did, I guess, in the movie from what I read. There are no dwarves and anything like that. He has an army of them. Those are his minions. And here he has mushroom people that he grows a fungus on their face and their mind control, which looks really cool. Like I said before, there are no goblins, no hobgoblins. They go on different side adventures in like the show, and it's very different. And so if they get a second season, they're gonna have to create everything on their own, because they pretty much like cherry picked places here and there from all 5 books and stuff, which was kind of stupid of them, because if they wanted multiple seasons, they should have cherry picked from like they should have just went from one book to another. They should have combined the first 2 books and then just kept going on from there, and then add stuff that's more mature in content, because they said they wanted to make this for a more mature modern audience and everything, and because the books can get a bit juvenile at times. They just went about it all the wrong way. It's a fantasy show with little fantasy to it. It's mostly just everybody's looking human and everybody's in the human world, and when they go into the fantasy world, it still looks like the human world. And it's just kind of like, if you're going to adapt something and change stuff, you change it for the better, not make it into a very generic YA novel type thing. Like, you see what I'm saying? Because, like, your main villain is supposed to be your main scary villain, and this dude is just kind of like, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, he does have a gripe with Jared, because Jared's always trying to stop him. Yeah, he is mean to Jared, but it's almost more like he's helping him in a way, because he's trying to figure out why this dude is so angry. But he wants, of course, the guide to Arthur's, like, whatever and everything. But it's so YA novelish. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the new Goosebumps from Disney Plus. Now I see what's going on here, because Disney Plus did a very similar thing with Goosebumps, where it was more of a YA novel than what the Goosebumps books were supposed to be, and it cherry picked little things here and there from like the classic books and television series. Disney Plus needs to stop that, because now Roku is getting blamed for all this crap. Happy Black History Month, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.